All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's special committee of the whole on Tuesday, October 14th at 6:30 p.m. Can I get a roll call?
Finkler.
Here.
Hammer.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Reed. Here. Relke.
Here.
Rostad.
Here.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
All right, I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
First by Alder Rolke and a second by Alder Meyer. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda approved. Public comment?
There's none.
Okay. New business. Discussion of Resolution 11-25, a resolution to approve an amendment to 2025 General Fund Budget for Expenditure Restraint Program to adjust base budget by $235,000 in the city of Columbus. Matt.
Good evening. I'm going to start by introducing the other gentleman at the table. This is Russ Van Gompel. Russ is a consultant with McMahon Associates. Russ is the former and now retired finance director for the city of Oshkosh. Been in municipal government a long time. He's been kind of working in the background, assisting and mentoring Kendra and helping myself as we go through the budget process this year. And as I identified in my memo, as we've been working to figure out our 2026 budget, Russ looked at our expenditure restraint worksheet filed with the Department of Revenue, and we were allowed a 4.7% increase last year under expenditure restraint, and we took a 0.7% increase, which then negates our ability to we lost that growth in our expenditure capabilities, which has really put us in a bad spot for the 26 budget. What Russ has suggested and what we've actually previously done as a city is done a budget amendment increasing our contingency in 2025 by $235,000 to allow us to expand and grow our 2026 budget. So we can both answer any questions you have, or but I'll turn it over to you guys for questions or further discussion.
Alder Lawson?
So in doing so, I thought I saw that this goes essentially into I want to say rainy day fund, but that's not the word. Contingency fund, right?
Correct.
So the funds don't necessarily get earmarked for anything specific. It's just in order to maximize the restraint allowance. Okay.
It is a editorial adjustment to our budget. That's all it is, to our 2025 budget. That's essentially what it is.
And so by maximizing this amount, does that kind of negate some of the
It resets-
areas where we were trying to reduce? Because now we've kind of pushed that number up.
It
That we're
resets
comparing.
our base number for how much we can increase the budget in 26. If that makes sense. And it allows us to maximize our allowable growth in the expenditure restraint program.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Rostad?
So basically, it does nothing for us in 25, other
It
than,
won't change anything in 25.
so it's just an accounting game.
It-
100%.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, and are we good moving this forward? All right, next, overview of 2026 city budget.
So all of these slides are going to look somewhat familiar, but be updated from last week's presentation and take into account that budget amendment that we just discussed. So the deadline updated tonight is the budget meeting. Our deadline for publishing an ad to meet the intent of a public hearing on November 4th is October 19th. So it'll be our intent following tonight, if the budget ad is approved, to get that published and move forward along this schedule. It allows the budget would then theoretically move from tonight to the council next Tuesday for review and any proposed changes with a scheduled public hearing on November 4th. Following the public hearing, the budget could be approved on November 4th, or if there are additional considerations, discussions, it could be brought back on November 18th to be approved and still meet our deadline for the tax filings. Again, this slide does not change. It shows, assessment year in 2024 of the assessed and equalized value being very close to each other. And again, as I said last week, we were required to do a reassessment every 5 years. We've talked internally about getting on a schedule of every 3 years so that we don't end up with these large reassessments, that it spreads that out a little more advantageous to everyone involved. See our general obligation debt. Our state limit this year was 35 million. Our actual GO debt is 10.9. Capital projects, there's some numbers updated here. This is a new number for vehicles based on the increased number for the plow truck that we've added 7% to. There's also, I've added in the stormwater project at the Second Ward Creek, the first project that was identified. You'll note that I'm no longer advocating for moving forward with the stormwater utility at this time. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You can see increases from the 25 budget to the 26 budget. Again, these general fund expenditure lines. Tax rate with the new numbers would be $6.97 for the city levy and a projected $17.87 for the jurisdiction. Those are projected numbers as we don't have final numbers from the school, the tech school, or the county. What a tax bill is going to look like in the city. On an average assessed home of $262,700, you're looking at a tax increase of $181.66, with a total tax bill on that average assessed home of $1,832.21. Again, this is the city portion that the city controls. There are 3 other jurisdictions that affect a city resident's tax bill. Receipt kind of breaks down what that average assessed home pays for. Starting at the police department at $441.02, down to emergency management at $4.36, and everything in between. Our levy calculation, our allowable levy for the state this year is that 2025 line, the 3.6 million. We are taking a debt service adjustment of just over $1 million to meet our actual levy at 4.6. You can see that does not leave a lot of cushion in our debt service. Again, it's projected debt service will increase in our future years due to our more aggressive schedule of addressing roads and other capital improvements. It's not going to increase enough, and so I'm projecting here that, and I don't know what happened in this chart. This is the problem with Excel sometimes. Our allowable levy in 2027 will not be $0. But what I'm projecting is that we're going to have to figure out another way of dealing with increasing our levy in future years. And so those are looking at more use of special revenue funds, looking at the stormwater utility. There are things we're going to need to do to lessen our general fund debt, or our general fund budget. There was discussion about cable TV at the last meeting. Met with staff and went through kind of what our discussion points are, and obviously looking for additional input. Franchise fees could go away as soon as 2028, 2029 at the earliest. There's really no timeline, and there's a lot of market variables. We know that cable TV as an entity is decreasing in use and popularity. The fund balance for cable TV, so this is outside of the budget. At the end of every year, if there's money in a special revenue fund, it gets put in a fund balance account. Okay? The city has historically not done a good job of sharing these fund balances, and the newest version of the budget that's now online on the city website shows these fund balances, and we're going to talk about that more as we go through the budget later. The fund balance in cable TV is $270,494. The fund use is tied to our current ordinance. The current ordinance says that the fund balance can only be used for cable-related expenses. The council could choose to revise that ordinance to allow for greater use of that fund distribution now or at the time when we decide to eliminate the cable TV fund. Eliminating our channels frees up staff time. We currently have staff time involved in programming and coordinating those channels. Recommendations would be to look at a July 1st, 2026 switch to streaming only, to review the ordinance by March of 2026 to determine use of fund balance, and that funds should be looked at as a one-time funding, should not plug a budget hole as it's one-time money. So there's a lot of different things that could be used with those funds to fund improvement projects or special projects, or look at a variety of ways that those funds could be used should you decide you want to do that. The one thing that I will share that is not in your version of the budget, in addition to those fund balances that were added in earlier this week, is I did have a chance to talk with our emergency management director, and he had some time over the weekend to contemplate the idea of additional hours. His concern is that he is retired, and additional hours are a double-edged sword. Although they're nice, he wants to limit that and still be able to consider himself semi-retired. So what I've done is I've doubled. We currently budget at 4 hours a week. We're going to move that up to 8 hours a week. That's just roughly under a $5,000 increase. And if there are no other changes, great. If there are, we'll figure that out. But I have how that impacts, and basically I would back down our contingency from 600,000 to 595, and allow that increase in funding for the emergency management director position. So,
Alder Meyer.
Stormwater utility. I want to know why we're going to kick the can another year. I think hear me out. I think it's extremely important. We've seen the dollars that are coming out in projects. Why would we wait and then potentially not have enough money for some of these stormwater projects, or be able to get more of these done? Regardless, we have to take that initial hit. I say we just get it done. If we're making this move tonight to adjust the 2025 budget, it doesn't make sense to me to not do it in 2026. I personally was completely opposed to a stormwater until you actually look into what it's used for. We have a water problem in Columbus, and we need to figure out ways to get rid of it. And kicking the can another year is not doing anything for anybody.
yeah, I'll respond. I share your sentiment. We are going to have to look at a stormwater utility at some time in the near future. My concern was $180 increase on taxes to an average assessed home, and then looking on top of that, $180 stormwater utility fee, projected $180 increase. It was a lot more palpable when the tax increase was looking at $41 from my perspective, but at some point in time, it's a bullet we're going to have to bite.
So I would ask that we bring those rates, not next week because we had a full agenda the way it is, but the following meeting. There's no reason why we can't cut the amounts in half for the first year, right, and ease into it for 2027.
The other thing is you could look at a half-year charge where you start billing July 1st,
I-
rather than at the front of the
I
year,
agree.
if that was an interest.
That's 100% where I was going next, was either like an every other month, which is probably a nightmare for clerical to take care of, but, or just cutting it in half for the first year and doing a whole year. I mean, at the end of the day, the city needs it. And if we really want to keep making improvements to our streets, our buildings, things of that nature, it's time to finally take a stand and do what's right.
Alder Rostad?
Can you go, since this isn't in our packet, can you go to the tax bill history?
Yep.
Because you said $41. You just said it again.
Yeah, in the last budget, we were looking at a $41 increase. This budget, with making the budget amendment that we're projected to do and taking our maximum allowable expenditure restraint capacity, it pushes that increase to $181.
But the tax bill history that was in last Tuesday's meeting is 133 and 177, not 41.
I'm sorry, where?
Last week's agenda, there's no $41 listed.
So since the budget was in the budget that was in the October 7th packet, you have to apologize, or I have to apologize, because I've done 5 separate budgets since the one that went in the packet on October 7th. So you're correct. It was 131.
130, no, yeah, but I'm just looking for that $41 number.
That was based on me making all the cuts that I had talked about having to make because of this expenditure restraint issue that we were running up against.
So that wasn't reflected in the tax bill history in October 7th meeting.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Alder Lawson?
So if we decide to move forward with the budget now as is, and then continue to progress towards this funding the stormwater utility, we can always make an amendment, right? Like, we don't have to wait now to
Yeah.
approve.
And one of the biggest discussions with, just to kind of lay this all out, one of the biggest discussions with stormwater is we have a very small stormwater budget. And it's set up as a special revenue fund. In your budget, it's going to be, I think it's budget 630 in the special revenue funds. So whatever the gap is between the revenue collected for that budget and the expenditures is direct assessed to the taxpayer. Okay, so if we fund a stormwater utility and you say everything that we're currently funding in that special revenue fund for stormwater is going to move to the stormwater utility, then that's going to lessen the tax impact on what you see in a tax bill, if that makes sense. But one of the questions that we're going to have to look at is, currently, as you're all aware, we have a water, a sewer, and electric utility. And there are allocations of staff time within the city that are allocated to those budgets. Portion of my salary, portion of Kendra's salary, portion of Ali Bushki's salary, and then we have a portion of HR's salary. There are 5 staff that are allocated to the utilities. There are some discussions or decisions that need to be made in terms of a stormwater utility. Are we allocating some of those staff expenses to the stormwater utility? And the variety of thoughts there in terms of billing and the staff doing the billing. Should that be time taken from the general fund and allocated to the stormwater utility? Those are discussions for the council to make. They don't have to be made now, but those are things that are going to have an impact on the general fund budget based on what decisions we make or don't make there. And there's nothing to say that, the staffing allocation for years 1 through 5 is going to be 0%. And then at some point in the future council could decide, to allocate staff at some point in the future to that utility.
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. I was just in prior agreement with wanting to
seriously start the stormwater utility this coming spring. It's so important to mitigate the flooding as much as we can. That's a huge problem, and I don't want to start, losing residents in certain areas just because we haven't taken the flooding seriously for such a long time. I would like to start off small, with smaller projects, so it's not such a hit to the taxpayer, but I think we've got to get going on it. Thank you.
Alder Rustad?
I don't know if you want to address emergency management now or when we go over the budget. I guess I just have a question.
Probably when we get to the budget.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the overview? All right, discussion of 2026 operating budget. Back to you, Matt.
So if you want to turn to page,
Magnifying glass.
on the budget itself, emergency management is on page 12 of the budget, and I will try and tell you what page of the packet that is in a minute. So, but you also have
15.
the updated budget, but that's just the. Still 15. Yeah, so it's page 15 in the packet, and all I'm going to say is the number for EMD salary, the first line on that page, is going to go from $4,390.37 to $8,780.73. And the next line for Social Security is going to increase to $671.73. So those are the two new amounts. And then I changed the contingency to, which is on page 5 of the budget. Which is page 8 of the packet.
We do have the numbers of like the pages for the budget too on
Oh,
here.
okay. So that $600,000 number changes to 595. And rather than making that look like a really weird number, I made another already weird number look like a weird number that was a trick left to me by the former treasurer. So it adjusts the health, dental, and vision insurance for the treasurer to $26,625.85. So those are the changes as a result of that. And what I'd ask is if you are going to approve this budget add, that you make the ad approval reflective of those changes. And when we get to the budget ad, I'll tell you what the two numbers that change on the budget ad as a result.
What was the dental?
Oh, it changes to $26,625.85.
Alder Meyer?
I know Bill's sitting in the back, but has he committed to 8 hours a day? I mean, or a week?
Blink twice.
8 hours.
if
I
you're
promise you not
okay.
8 hours a day. I remember you're still retired. I don't have an issue with it. I just don't want to allocate funds somewhere if our current manager, if he's not committed to it, right?
I think in his discussion with me, he understands that there's a need for some more hours and that there are things that he'd like to be able to do with those additional hours. But I think he's also trying to be careful in that making sure that it remains something that he wants to continue to do, because I think we all realize we're beneficial. We benefit, the city benefits by Bill being willing to fill that role.
Correct. Okay. I just want to make sure.
And you're welcome to say anything if you'd like, Bill.
I think you relayed what I feel quite well. maybe for the next following time it might be 10 or whatever. Fluctuate depending on what's going on.
Any other discussion on the budget? All right. Next, discussion of the 2026 budget ad date for publishing.
So the budget ad that is in your packet would be the ad that would be posted in the paper. Again, this doesn't commit us to anything. We just have to be able to present and track any changes made to the budget. So if at next council's meeting, there's a change or a recommended change, or even at the public hearing, we just have to be able to communicate that to a party that is interested in what has changed since the ad was published. So it's a statutory requirement. The two numbers that are going to change is, and this is really small on my screen, so I'm going to blow it up a little bit. You'll see in the middle of the page on the left-hand side, there's a general fund expenditures. And in the 2026 proposed budget line, which is the third column, general government is going to change to 1 million. No, I got to make sure I'm reading off the right page. The number is going to change to 1,718,640. And the public safety number will change to 2,276,245. And that's reflective of that change with the emergency management salary. So we're asking that be the budget ad that gets approved for publishing in the paper.
Alder Lawson?
So you talked a little bit about these fund balances, and it looks like, if I'm looking at these right, that some of them are negative. Is that right? So like the aquatic center, for instance.
No, what I'm trying to understand this myself. These are the 1 year snapshot. And so if you look at the aquatic center, what that is showing is we had revenues of the aquatic center at 183,650. We had expenditures of 303,809. So the deficit was 120,159, and it shows a fund balance of 253,282. But it's also showing that 120,159 deficit was offset by property taxes. So that is what is the portion, and I'm trying to think of a good way of showing this. So when you look on this budget ad on the left, on the 24 tax bill, it shows that we taxed 125,000, and in 2025 we taxed 120,159 for the aquatic center, which matches that deficit. What the fund balance is showing is any number in the fund balance that, well, Russ, feel free to jump in and save me here.
Save you? I don't know if I can.
Okay.
I think what you got going on is you're not really calling it a true fund balance, because what you have is revenue less your property tax revenue. Some communities that I've worked for and worked on, we've actually rolled the tax into the revenue number so that you're looking at total anticipated revenue and total anticipated expenditures. Either way is fine. I mean, you can do it this way, but you need to understand that it's really net revenue and expenditures, net of not having property taxes in the revenue number, if that makes sense to you. Some communities put the property tax into the revenue number, so you got a total revenue and a total expenditures. But in your past experience, you have not shown it that way. I kind of like that way a little bit better, because then you can see what the total pie is, so to speak. It's not revenue less property taxes, it's revenue with the property taxes. So I think what you're working with right now is what you've done in the past. which is okay, but it's just, probably there's another way to make it easier for people to follow the numbers.
As, just to add to this, as I shared with the mayor and council president earlier today, I discovered a 2017 policy titled General Fund Undesignated Fund Balance. And one of the requirements of this policy is an annual review by the council of what that fund balance is, and that we are to maintain 10% of what is equal to 3 months of the annual general fund operating budget in that account, which we are. We're more than 10%. But that the council is annually to have a discussion about an amount, whatever amount is in excess of that 10%, of what to do with it. And I've been here for enough now that we should have had this discussion at least twice, and that hasn't occurred. So I think one of the things that as we get through the budget process, we're going to want to take a look at what are our financial policies, when were they last updated, what do we not have that we should have, and this is another area where Russ is going to be able to help us in looking at what are best practices out there, along with GFOA, and making sure that we have financial policies in place that are modern and protect the city and do the things that we need to do. I know we have some policies, I don't think we have all of them in place, and that a big area of work that we need to look at is these fund balances, because if I'm reading and Russ and I had a conversation about this before the meeting, some of our fund balances have funds where, say, for instance, the pool. If I know this is showing wrong, because the accounting shows we have about $250,000 roughly in a fund balance for the pool. Therefore, if we're doing a $40,000 capital improvement project, it doesn't make sense to borrow that $40,000. It makes sense to use the fund balance to pay for that investment back in the facility. And so this is it's something that I think we've been missing in recent years, that we need to take a look at. Again, fund balance shouldn't be looked at as plugging a budget hole one time. But fund balance to reduce our capital borrowing, to me, would make a lot of sense. And looking at where we can do that, some funds it's going to be easier than others. It's not going to be an every year thing, but occasionally, especially with smaller projects, it could be a way of reducing some of that borrowing for capital investment. And that could be as early as next year if we get everything in place that we need to.
So through that process, would we potentially move excess funds from one place to another so we don't have big positives and big negatives? Is that?
I need to check on why that's showing as a negative, because it shouldn't, and it might be a formula issue, and that may need to be corrected before we publish the budget ad.
Yeah, okay.
Alder Rosted?
So the cemetery has a fund balance of 227. Did I read that correct?
Correct.
Do they know they have that fund balance?
Again, I'm going to say this as carefully as I can. I don't think we've had enough discussion about fund balance in the past, and that's going to be every committee and every one of these special funds. That I can't answer that question, Ryan. I don't believe that they know that exists.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the budget ad? Alder Meyer?
I've been kicking this around in my head for the last 40 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. I don't want to wait till March to bring the cable commission or any of these funds in front of us. I think there's an opportunity to do it this year, and I think once we get through the rest of the next couple budget meetings, I'd like to see it on a committee of the whole. Especially that cable ordinance. That one drives me crazy. Sooner the better on that one.
Anything else on budget ad date? All right, is everybody good with moving that forward? Words are hard. All right, That's everything. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right, a first by Alder Meyer and a second by Alder Rolke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the special Common Council meeting of Tuesday, October 14th, and welcome to those that are watching per cable. And could I have a roll call, please?
Finkler.
Here.
Hammer.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Reed. Here. Relke.
Here.
Rostad.
Here.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I acknowledge this meeting was posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, thank you. At that time, then I would look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Meyer, second by Alder Finkler. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then public comment? There is none. None? Okay. Then item number 1 under new business is to consider and take action on Resolution 11-25, a resolution to approve an amendment to the 2025 general fund budget for expenditure restraint program to adjust the budget by $235,000 in the city of Columbus, Wisconsin.
Move to approve resolution 11-25.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Alder Meyer, second by Alder Rolke. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. Is this a roll call? Or just a? Okay, roll call, please.
Rostad.
Aye.
Lawson.
Aye.
Relke. Aye. Meyer.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Finkler. Aye. Ayes have it, 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Then next is to consider and take action on the 2026 budget add date for publishing.
Could I jump in on this before you guys
Yes.
talk about it?
Yes.
The two things I'm going to ask is that you reflect the corrected numbers that I read earlier. I can reread them. General government for 2026 proposed $1,718,640. For public safety, $2,276,245. And then I'd ask that you give me some leeway in adjusting any of the fund balance numbers that we identify are incorrect.
Can you repeat the public safety number, please?
The public safety number is $2,276,245.
Okay, entertain a motion with the statement of corrections that the city administrator had made.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2026 budget add date for publishing with the noted updates and the direction for the city administrator to review the fund balances and make any appropriate updates.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Alder Lawson, second by Alder Rolke. Any further discussion on this item?
When you
Alder Meyer.
when you say the fund dates, are you talking about those specific funds that we were talking about earlier?
Any of the negative numbers and why they're showing.
Okay,
that way. We
just the
wanted to
negative
make
ones.
sure
All
that
right,
they're
then.
corrected.
Yep, we're good.
Anybody else? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Reports, Matt, do you have anything?
I did, but I forgot. So I'll have to wait till next Tuesday. I'm sorry.
All right. I would just like to thank everybody here for all their work in reviewing the budget, all the good questions and statements regarding such. And then going forward with everything that we need to accomplish for the remainder of this year and going into next year. So thanks all very much. With that, a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
He even waited.
Motion by Alder Finkler, Second by Alder Roki to adjourn. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?